Welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting of Portsmouth City Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, I'm the leader of the Council and I'll be the chair of this meeting. But a housekeeping before we get started: if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble in the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. This is because there is a rather large ice rink where we would otherwise gather. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Would everyone please remember that if you're speaking via a microphone, you will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including anyone making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. We've read the reports, so officers will stick to any highlights and developments that are specific since the data publication. We'll begin with some introductions this afternoon and we'll begin on my left with the City Solicitor.
Thank you, Chair. Peter Ball, City Solicitor.
Natalie Brommer-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Claire.
Claire Looney, Partnership and Commissioning Manager.
Mark Collings, Seafront Operations Officer.
Adrian Rosier, Parks Development Manager.
Colette Hill, Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods. Kelly Nash from Strategy Unit.
Councillor Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City.
Charlotte Gerarda, Labour Councillor for Central Southsea.
Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Central Services.
Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Matthew Winnington, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Dave Ashmore, I help look after environmental services.
Thanks everyone, and we are joined by Toby from the news this afternoon, who's also very welcome. Okay, we do have one deputation this afternoon. Are you okay to stay until we get to that item, Charlotte, or would you need to do the deputation and go? Yes. We've got an intervention on order of agenda from Councillor Winnington, so let me take that first and then we'll see where we stand. I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Can I request that items 4 and 8 are taken first in terms of our items for decision and noting, as I have to go to the National Children's Adult Services Conference as soon as possible to try and avoid traffic on the way to Liverpool.
Okay, so let's mess with the agenda. Did you mean 5 and 8?
Oh, sorry, 5 and 8, yes. Sorry, Steve.
Okay, so hang on a minute. 2. So if I come to the letter 3rd, you'll be higher up the agenda than you otherwise would have been. Is that okay? Or did you just want to do your deputation and go, Charlotte? Sorry, it's your call, really. That's the lumpier items that are moving to the beginning. I don't mind at all, whatever you're comfortable with. Is that okay? Okay, in that case, Councillor Charlotte Gerarda has expressed a wish to do a deputation on the item related to the proposed sister city link with Valletta Malta, which is item 7. So we'll hear Councillor Gerarda's deputation now. Have you got? Do you need to declare any interest with that? City solicitors just asking. No, I've already done declarations on the other stuff. So, yeah. I don't think that's a I think you're okay. Over to you. You don't need to stand up in this meeting.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure of convention. I declare I'm Maltese, but hopefully that doesn't stop me from speaking. So yeah, thank you, Chair, Leader. I just wanted to come along to speak in favour of the Officer recommendation to investigate a sister city link between Portsmouth and Valletta. So firstly, I wanted to outline the important historical links between Portsmouth and Valletta. Malta is a former British colony and is part of the Commonwealth of Nations. Valletta is the capital of Malta and hosts the country's busy international port. Malta and Portsmouth have a special relationship because Malta was a core naval base for Britain for over 150 years. As Portsmouth is the British home of the Royal Navy, anyone who has served will have visited Valletta at some point in their careers, basically. Secondly, there's a significant connection through World War II. Malta was a critical location during the war. It fended off Nazis in the skies and Italian fascists who torpedoed the seas. Valletta's dock was the place ships would disembark, carrying vital supplies. However, many ships were prevented from doing so because they were targeted by Nazis, and indeed my own great uncle was one of the men killed in one of the heinous acts by Nazis. Thirdly, there's shared history through the Maltese migrants that came to Portsmouth because of industry, and it's the reason that I was born here. My nanu was among hundreds of other Maltese that worked at the dockyard, and I'm really proud of the contributions that Maltese families have made to Portsmouth, and there are now 3 generations of Maltese families living here. Since proposing the idea of twinning Valletta and Portsmouth, I've had dozens of residents reach out to share their support, and I always love hearing stories from residents about their time served in Malta, or hearing stories about those who've lost loved ones, but who shared really amazing stories about their time living there or serving there. So I just wanted to share some of the stories that have been sent in to me by residents. Both of our fathers served in the Royal Navy, Malta convoys during World War II. It would be great to have that recognised. They both spoke very warmly about the Maltese people and their amazing courage during the siege. An excellent idea. Our 2 towns have so much in common. My wife and I are both local, but she's from a naval family. Her parents lived in Valletta for several years and her older brother was born there. We stayed there and loved the city. It has some amazing architecture and it's a natural match. As well as numerous Royal Navy and Marines relatives visiting Malta during their careers, I had a relative in the army who was stationed at Southsea Castle in 1906. On the 1911 census, they were at Fort Tigner, Sliema, Malta. These are just some that I know about, so links must be great and many. I hope this goes ahead. My reason is that my maternal grandparents were both from Eastney. My grandfather was based in Malta and my grandmother joined him. My mother was born there in 1930 and had a full Maltese birth certificate, of which she was very proud. When my parents were alive, we had a couple of holidays there and enjoyed the Maltese hospitality. My grandfather served during the war in Malta, and my uncle served in the British Navy in the UK. My grandparents decided to relocate to the UK with the rich naval history and my uncle serving in the city. My mother, being Maltese, has been living in Portsmouth since she was 12 and is now 69. She is very proud of her roots and we visit all the time. I love my Maltese heritage and I'm proud to have dual nationality. Good luck in your quest to join these 2 fabulous cities I also hold dear in my heart. There's just 2 more, I promise I won't go on for too long. They're just so good. I'm half Maltese and have been raised to be immensely proud of our small nation. My dad, John, left Malta in the 1970s as he joined the Merchant Navy. He stopped in Portsmouth and eventually came back as many of his Maltese friends settled here. He got a job at the dockyard, along with many other Maltese people working there for over 40 years. Every Saturday he would go downtown and meet his Maltese friends. It would mean the world to him if the council voted in favour of this. It would give him the boost he needs as he's about to start his 3rd lot of chemotherapy. I would love for him to be able to go back to Malta and see twinned with Portsmouth sign. Then this last one, which I think just sums up how intertwined the 2 locations are. This would be brilliant. We stayed in Valletta a few years ago, naive to the shared history of Pompey and Malta. My husband, born and bred Portsmouth boy, and I walked into the hotel to find it full of Portsmouth FC memorabilia, naval artwork and posters of the Mary Rose. We couldn't believe it. Needless to say, during our trip, we went on to learn about Malta's amazing history, and it's still one of our favourite places to this day. So I know that obviously looking back and celebrating connections isn't enough for recommending cities for twinning, which is why I wanted to share why it's such a fantastic growth opportunity for our city and council. So the 3 aims of twinning are to promote Portsmouth's link to the people of Portsmouth and enable them to meet people from different cultural groups and societies, promote participation with those groups and activities, and develop mutual economic benefits. So Portsmouth's twinning with Valletta meets the first aim because I'm already in contact with the Mayor of Valletta and the Council, and they're in full support of the twinning. And they asked me to say that they see this sort of shared history, similarities and opportunities for future development as a real opportunity. A formal twinning would provide a stronger foundation for these shared opportunities and strengthen our connection. And Portsmouth and Valletta have a lot of similarities for anyone who hasn't been there, both very densely populated, with a really strong island mentality and fortifications. So it's probably why Maltese people love to be in Portsmouth and why the good people of Portsmouth like visiting Valletta. Lots of similarities. Secondly, in terms of promoting participation with groups and activities such as art, sports and education, Valletta is a thriving hub in all of those areas. Valletta has dozens of art galleries, university buildings and sports facilities, and it was the European Capital of Culture in 2018. So a twinning could offer shared learning about our cultural offers. Thirdly, and most importantly, I think, twinning could develop mutual economic benefits. So Valletta's port is one of the most visited cruise ports and has 2 to 3 times as many calls as we do currently in Portsmouth. And Valletta saw close to 900,000 passenger movements in 2023. So with development of our own port, twinning could boost tourism and economic benefits for both sides. And I have spoken to our port director, Mike Sellers, who said that cruise liners currently make calls to Valletta, and Mediterranean cruises are a growth area for us as a city. And he's also kindly offered to bear the brunt of any trips to Malta, if necessary, to investigate any port arrangements. How kind of Mike to offer to do that. Thank you. So, yeah, just to sum up, I'm asking Cabinet to support the twinning of Portsmouth and Valletta to strengthen these connections, commemorate our shared histories, and create future opportunities through our port cities. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, now, that means you can go if you need to. And thank you very much. So we're now going back to the beginning of the agenda again. Sorry to dot around a bit, but I knew Charlotte would have a work need to get back to work, so we'll give her the opportunity to leave. We've got apologies for absence this afternoon from Councillor Susie Horton, who is at a conference. We have apologies from Councillor Lee Hunt, who is unwell. We have apologies from Councillor Peter Candlish, who is attending another council event and which he's speaking at today. Have I forgotten anyone? Councillor Darren Sanders is on annual leave, returning tomorrow. So I think we're all covered. And declarations of interest on other items on the agenda, are there any? No? No, okay, all right, moving on then in order to meet Councillor Winnington's requirements, because he's got to get to the same conference as Councillor Horton and needs to leave early, we're now going to go to the item on the agenda, which is listed as item 5, which is the Dog Control Public Spaces Protection Order paper, and that's over to Mark.
Good afternoon. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for an extension and potential variation of the existing 2022 Public Spaces Protection Order relating to dog fouling and dog controls. The existing order expires on the 7th of January 2025. We have a Public Spaces Protection Order that covers the city, parks and beach. It's generally considered that the rules in place are suitable for parks, and we haven't had or a great deal of interaction with people asking for the rules to be changed there. So the renewal of the PSPO looks at the consideration of changes to the rules in the beach area. So the recommendations are that the Cabinet considers the outcomes of public consultation, which was via the public and statutory consultee organisations, and the 2 items that were put into the public consultation was the proposed movement of the eastern boundary of the exclusion zone, which is currently level with the Yompa statue, moving to a line adjacent to the business at St George's Road and east of the Esplanade, currently known as Coffee Cup. And the second item of consultation was the introduction of a time-limited restriction to exercising dogs on the beach during the bathing season, 1st of May, 30 September, which would replace the 24-hour exclusion which currently exists. So, yeah, asking Cabinet to consider the outcomes of the public consultation.
Thank you, Mark. Members, I'm going to take the two elements of this independently in terms of the discussion, just so that we're clear, because we're proposing something which becomes a legal document today. So comments and questions, please, regarding the change in the boundary from the Yomper statue at Eastney to the coffee cup near St George's Road. Councillor Winnington.
Thank you, and thank you for the report, Mark, and all the work that's gone into this. I know it was a very successful consultation with I think one of the most successful in terms of responses to consultation we've had. Obviously, as we know, people in Portsmouth are passionate about dogs, one way or the other. I'm ward councillor for this area, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I spoke on it before I have to toddle off today. On this one, I'm completely content with the moving of the eastern boundary to the coffee cup. I think the consultation response was overwhelmingly positive for dog owners, but it was also positive overall from non-dog owners. And so therefore, I think it is something that is sensible to do. One of the issues, for those who may not know, is if you're on Eastney Beach and you're down on it because of the nature of the beach, especially the width of it at that stage and also of effective pebble dunes, is that you cannot see the Yomper if you're down at the waterline. And so therefore, you don't know where your boundary is, whereas as you can see, because of just the nature of the beach and how it works at that point, you can see the coffee cup. So as much as anything, it stops anyone from inadvertently breaching the boundary at the moment by having something sensible. And also, it just makes sense that that entire stretch of beach is not part of an exclusion, as it really, its character is very similar. When you get further west, the character starts to be quite different. So you've got a beach that has a certain character, being available to dog walkers, and therefore changing that exclusion, and also making sure that they know where that boundary is. Plus, you've had a very positive response to this overall. Certainly a majority of all the people coming to it, and even a majority of people who don't own dogs. And I speak as a non-dog owner. I'm not a particular dog fan. I've had some unfortunate experiences with dogs in the past, but I do think that it is right and proper that we have good dog walking facilities available for people, and that beach is big enough and wide enough to be able to do that all the way up to the coffee cup. So I'm full support of recommendation 1.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? No, none. I'm minded to agree with Councillor Winnington on this one. Okay, the second part of the consultation relates to the changes to the access times during the bathing season, which is from the 1st of May to the 30th of September, where dogs are currently excluded from the stretch of beach between what it was the Yomper, but would now be the coffee cup if we do go with that recommendation, through as far as Southsea Castle, and they're also excluded from the beach at the Hot Walls. They are currently allowed on the beach from the Yomper statue to going eastward, which would change to the coffee cup boundary, and they are currently allowed on the beach at the area around hover travel, which won't be currently accessible due to the sea defence works, would be included as an accessible area for dog owners during the bathing season once that stretch reopens in 2026. Members' thoughts, please. Councillor Winnington.
Yes, in comparison to the first recommendation, the second recommendation, I think the responses were much narrower in terms of being in favour, and it was overwhelmingly, the reason why it was in favour just overall was because of the response from dog walkers. For non-dog owners, it was particularly negative, and therefore I think we need to look at it in the round as everything in terms of the the response from the people as a whole, and I don't think there's enough evidence at this stage for us to be looking at raising this restriction. I think also there is the situation that other places do not have a similar thing around in our area, so I do have concerns that this would be something that would maybe attract people from elsewhere, and we would perhaps get a surfeit and it become difficult to control. So I do not support recommendation 2.
Okay, thank you. I think I'd add in that we do have to think about not just the survey responses, but how many what percentage of people in the UK own dogs within a household, and it's about 35% from the evidence, and therefore we have had a very large response from dog owners and a smaller response from those who don't own dogs, which is actually not proportionate to the incidence of dog ownership in the country. So we need to, I think, look at some of this through that filter. There's also, as you quite rightly said, Councillor Winnington, there's the issue around enforceability. We don't currently have an active seafront team. We have some cover from community wardens who visit sometimes, but they're a demand-led service and they go where they're needed, so they're not down on the seafront on a daily basis necessarily. So we have Mark on his bike, riding around, keeping an eye on things, and duty officers at the weekend. But it's a 3-mile stretch of seafront, and extending the potential accessibility for dog owners would be, well, it would, I think, in my view, would be almost completely unenforceable. And therefore, with the other issue that you've raised around access, which I know we'd also spoken about previously, around whether or not it would attract more people from outside the area and then upset the balance of local use as it currently stands, where we know that there's already not a clear majority for dog owners against and in favour of making that change. In fact, there's a majority who are against. Then we've got a responsibility around community cohesion that we need to protect there. The only other thing I was going to mention was that we do need to make sure that if we make the change at Eastney, that because it's a change, it's well signposted. So I'm going to request that Mark not only updates the signage on the prom, where it currently is, but also arranges some signage the other side of the coffee cup, because it narrows the beach there slightly by the existence of the coffee cup itself, and is an opportunity to remind people not to go beyond that point. And also, since Colette is here today, I think when this is introduced, we should get a mobile camera down there to keep an eye on it for the bathing season next year. So that's an official request from me to do so, because we will have lots of people feeding back, and I'd like, if there are any issues with it, that to be an evidence-based review and not something that's just anecdotal. So hopefully it'll all go fine, but that's an opportunity to keep an eye on it. So, Matt?
Yeah, if I can just come back in as well, I think the other thing too, as I mentioned in my comments, that the beach is very wide up until you get to the coffee cup. It does start to, it's even wide a bit after that, but it does start to narrow quite a bit. So actually, by moving it from the Yomper to the coffee cup, you're not just talking about a small beach like we have, say, on Clarence Parade or even round South Parade Pier. It is a very, very wide beach there. So the amount of surface area you've got of extra dog walking area by extending it from the Yomper to the coffee cup is very substantial. And therefore, the amount of extra space you're going to have is pretty big. And therefore, I think with that additional space, and there's plenty of spaces for dogs to really be able to get some good exercise and have a good run around there, which if you open it up nearer you get to South Parade Pier and beyond, actually it starts to get very narrow. And much less space anyway. So there's a lot less amenity, and there's a lot less ability for people to be able to enjoy the beach without having dogs around. Which on the Eastney side, even up to the coffee cup, you've got huge amounts of space for people to enjoy it and have plenty of space to themselves as well. So I think that is worth saying, that this isn't like opening a little portion of beach. This is actually a huge surface area of land additional.
That's a really good point, Matt. And I think the final point I want to make is that we have discussed informally as a cabinet group around the management of the seafront at the moment, and particularly minded by this change, we're looking to do something we did during the COVID period, which was reintroduce the seafront patrol next summer and see how that goes. We've already had a discussion around that, and that will help us with, well, help Mark certainly with getting a good understanding of what is and isn't working around the seafront area, because it's not just this issue. There are other complaints that we get as well, and people want, there's always an argument on both sides, and having a good overview of that and well observed for a whole season will be very helpful. So we are intending to do that as part of the budget process. Okay, the way I've had to deal with this is because we were resolving it in debate. I've written 3 different versions. So the one that I'm going to read out is hopefully the right one. If you are content with it at the end, then we will proceed to adopt. I am going to share a copy of it with Peter as City Solicitor. Thank you. Because this is a legal document that we're agreeing to, and therefore we need to be very clear that the wording is correct and compliant and that he doesn't have any concerns. So he'll follow it through with us, and if he has, he'll let us know. So when considering any change to the current PSPO, it's important to look at the potential effectiveness and enforceability of any proposed changes. It's also relevant to consider that around a third of UK households, I think it's actually 35%, own a dog, whereas the survey respondents were made up of around 67% of dog owners, walkers, and only 32% were non-dog owners. The proposed change to the boundary at Eastney is primarily driven through practicality. The current boundary at the Ompa statue isn't visible from the shoreline, so there is potential uncertainty about the current PSPO location for dog owners walking on the beach, which can cause confusion with infringement and enforceability of the current PSPO. Having a clear landmark visible from the beach will assist dog owners and walkers, whilst also making clear what is the summer exclusion zone. On the survey responses, there is a very clear overall majority in favour of the proposal to move the boundary to the coffee cup. Overall, 61% strongly agree, rising to 81% amongst dog owners, and even amongst non-dog owners, a minority are strongly against, 47%. On balance, we propose to change the boundary at Eastney to the coffee cup in line with the survey results, and place signage at the eastern edge of the coffee cup location at both promenade and beach, and monitor its effectiveness via CCTV for the next season from 1st of May to 30th September 2025. On the second question in the consultation, designated timings, allowing dog walkers access to all areas of the beach all year round, there is less support from residents, particularly non-dog owners, with 53% strongly against. Given the level of dog ownership nationally and the statistical reliability of the consultation, there is clearly a majority of beach users against a change. Enforcement is also a concern. The beach stretches along the whole of the seafront, and without a dedicated seafront patrol team, monitoring the change and enforcing any infringements will be extremely problematic and could swiftly erode confidence amongst beach users. It is the administration's role to avoid anything that could lead to community tensions. Additionally, we have consulted officers, and no other coastal or local authority within an hour's travel time of Portsmouth has such a policy in place. We are concerned that this could lead to a significant increase in dog owners travelling into the city from other areas in the summer, upsetting the current balance and placing an even greater burden on the need for effective enforcement. We therefore reject the option to allow time-limited access, beach access for dog walkers beyond the areas already designated under the existing PSPO at this time. Dog walkers will still be able to access the area of Eastney Beach, now to be located east of the Coffee Cup. Once the new cedar fences open between Blue Reef and Hover Travel, there will be access for dog walkers as currently. Both areas will be available all year round. The hot walls in the area between Southsea Castle and the Coffee Cup will remain a dog exclusion as currently. The administration intends to trial a seafront patrol during the next bathing season to assist with public information around all the do's and don'ts across the area, helping to ensure that the needs of all seafront users are balanced. Can I just check something with Peter before I ask his opinion on that? Councillor Barrett and I own dogs. Does that give us a prejudicial interest that we should be concerned about? No. Thank you. Thought we'd better check. Peter, are you happy with the statement?
Excited.
Okay, he's excited. He's excited by the statement. Okay, so we think we're okay. In that case, it's proposed as written. Members, are we happy to accept? Please indicate. Thank you. Agreed. Okay. That was a bit complex. I'll get that out of the way. Now we're moving on to the second item that Matt wanted us to consider before he needs to leave to a conference, which is, you've asked one of the exciting things to be moved forward. So item 8, Chris is jubilant. Item 8 on the agenda is the one that will be considered next, and that's a revenue budget monitoring 2024-25, second quarter to the end of September. Chris.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Winnington, for putting me at the top of the agenda for once. Nothing to add to the report, but just a few highlights. You'll see from the report that there's an underlying forecast overspend for the Council in the current year, that is, and this is the half-year position, of £12.6 million. You'll be well aware of some of those financial pressures on the Council. They've been well rehearsed recently in council meetings and elsewhere. Temporary accommodation is a big cost pressure on the council, which you will all know about, and that amounts to 5.6 million. There's pressures within adult social care, in total around about 3.2 million, but particular incidents of that around residential and nursing care placements, and across children and families too, with £3 million extra on placements, both for those of ordinary age, as you might say, and also for care leavers. But that portfolio overall is experiencing financial cost pressures of over £5 million themselves. We obviously had some of those items are exceptional, and some of those items we knew were a risk, and we'd planned for some of that cost within the council's corporate contingency. So if we deduct the provision from the corporate contingency, we have a residual overspend that the council need to manage of around about 5.1 million. The council's contingency that is left over after having accommodated those exceptional pressures at that level could accommodate the £5.1 million forecast overspend and leave the council with a balanced budget for the year. The key considerations going into next financial year, of course, 25-26, is the extent to which any of those cost pressures remain, as they are not explicitly planned in our financial plans going forward. I'll leave it there, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Members, questions or comments? Matt?
Thank you. And as the only Cabinet member who is responsible for one of these three budgets that Chris has mentioned, I thought it was right to make sure that I spoke on this. But to be honest, Chris, I just wanted to be here. That's the thing. You know, I couldn't resist having this before I popped off today. Seriously though, this is something that is affecting councils right across the country, and all these three areas are things that are affecting councils right across the country. Temporary accommodation, I was speaking to one of our colleagues in Fareham. So Fareham, a much smaller authority, a district, a borough council, and they've got £2 million pressure on their temporary accommodation budget. So it just goes to show that it is everywhere, and it is affecting, and as a proportion of their budget, of course, that is absolutely massive. It is because they are a district council without all the functions that upper tier authorities have as well. So it's something that is hitting everyone. And I know Councillor Sanders, if he was here, he would be mentioning about when he was at the LGA conference, as he did at the last full council meeting, that was something that councillors of all colours were saying was an issue, including, of course, Labour councillors who were really going to their party colleagues in government and saying, this needs sorting now. Unfortunately, nothing's come through. On children's, we've got this ongoing disaster of massive placement costs. Councils bidding against councils, trying to get placements that cost tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of £1,000s a week. And because there's so much bidding for it, it's a seller's market. And these organisations that are often owned by hedge funds, not interested really in the actual business of it or of care, they're just interested in the profit margin. They are just price gouging. And it's just become absolutely endemic across children's social care. And even going line by line by line on children in care that we have in care, the costs just refuse to go down. And again, this is happening in every local authority. And then in adult social care, the underlying inflation that's just gone up. We had, I've talked before about the fact that our curve is high, is earlier than expected. Always expecting this curve to go up with people who need social care, who have social care needs, and hitting it, but it's come a couple of 2 to 3 years earlier than we would have expected, on top of the inflationary costs that all providers are having, and then we've got on top of that now, we've got obviously this announcement of national insurance rise, which while it might not be in this year, is something that is going to be feeding into following years. So, of course, this is in year for this year. So all that announcement that people have heard from government, it's not for this year. It's not for this year. It's for next year. And that was one of the criticisms that the LGA, Local Government Association, all parties have said to government, what are you doing for us this year? We've already had in Hampshire them giving voluntary redundancy to pretty much any member of staff that wants it, because they have to find tens of £1 million worth of savings. We have other authorities around the country literally stopping doing services, minimising statutory services. We're not in this situation in Portsmouth now, but that's not to say we won't be if things do not improve. So, as Chris said, and it's thanks to the brilliant work that all our officers do in this council, together with our operational officers and our finance teams, to keep us on as even a keel as we can. We've also made difficult and right decisions over the years to make sure we're in as good a state as possible. But when you see numbers like this, and you see no help from government for in-year, when you hear that next year's things are probably going to be gobbled up mostly by national insurance rise, that is where it starts to get panic stations. Straight from this meeting, I'm going to the National Children's and Adult Services Conference, where I'll be talking to colleagues who are cabinet members for adults, adult social care and children's social care, officers from adult social care and children's social care, and I'm expecting it to be a black mood. And I'm not surprised. The legacy left by the last government has left councils in dire straits. But this government is not doing enough. They waited too long for their budgets, they left us hanging on the edge, and they're doing nothing for councils in year. We can cover it this year in Portsmouth. Obviously, we are going to work as hard as we can to get those numbers down in year, but we know we can cover it. But that's this year. Next year is not the same question, not when £900,000 of a £1.3 billion of extra funding for social care, this is for children and adults, announced by the government, from an organisation has done some analysis, £900 million of that will be gobbled up by national insurance increases in adult social care alone. That just won't. So there's £400 million. We'll have to do everything else for adults and children's. That's not even including children's social care. So what will happen? That probably £1.3 billion sounds like a lot of money. Probably won't even touch the sides. So it's an incredibly difficult situation. I thank everyone in the council for the work they're doing, but I do put this plea once again. I will be making this point at the conference coming up, and I know Councillor Horton will be as well from a children's point of view, saying to ministers, you need to help us now because otherwise we will have to stop doing services for our adults and children because we literally won't be able to afford it. We will only be able to do the absolute essentials. And you can forget about anything else the council does. All those things, those things we like doing, you can't do. And councils already are looking at that right across the country. So thank you for the report. It is sobering. It is unavoidable. And if it was avoidable, we wouldn't be seeing it happening in every single council in this country. We've done our best to mitigate, and we continue to do our best, but there's only so much we can do. We need government to step up to the plate, because otherwise we're going to get to our next one of these reports, our next quarterly report, well, it'll be the end of year, and then to the end of the year, and it will still be exactly the same situation. And then if this money isn't going to work for us next year, if it's not going to even cover the sides, then we're going to be in an even worse situation next year.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Mason.
I would echo what my colleague has said, but I think it is also worth emphasising that the variance which we see here, i.e. the unexpected overspend, is overspent in services which are statutory. They are things we have to do. There was no room for, or no scope for avoidance of this overspend. It came upon us. We have to bear it. And I think that if we look at the way in which it has been managed by our team, I think it has been managed remarkably well, and that the damage to our finances is minimised by the way in which it has been handled.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone else? No, I think colleagues, you've summed the situation up very, very well. I think worth noting that the government's been bandying around a figure of £4 billion in core funding increase for local government for next year. I'm extremely disappointed that the new government's decided to do the same as the old government, and that is include rises in council tax as part of that core funding. So the 2.7 billion will come from council tax bills landing on through people's doors because councils have no choice, and the government make it sound like they've given us the money. I mean, it's literally hypocrisy because they're pretending that they're giving you your money. Well, it's a nice scam if you can get one, isn't it? And as Matt's quite rightly pointed out, the 1.3 billion is all going to be soaked up by mainly the council suppliers having to pay higher wages and higher national insurance costs. So we wait with bated breath to find out when this government's actually going to do something remotely useful to help local government, because it's failed miserably to date. And despite rebukes from our local MPs about me not giving them enough time, sorry guys, the time ran out on the 4th of July. We're now in overtime, and we're reaching a very critical stage in local government right across the country. Wake yourselves up. Colleagues, are we happy with the report? Thank you. Accepted then. So, having done what everybody else wanted, just before you leave, Matthew, could you sit down again just for 30 seconds while I refer you back to the minutes of the previous meeting so that we can agree those? Can I have a proposer, please, that they are a true record? Councillor Barrett, and seconded by Councillor Winnington. There you go, Anna, that's ticked that box, so you're okay now. So we've done that one. Which means we can finally come on to what was item 4 on the agenda, and that's the City Vision Update Report. Kelly, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. So I'm representing Charlotte Smith today, who pulled the report together but is actually unable to attend. The report before you summarises the work that has been taking place with partners across the city on delivering the ambitions of the City Vision, which was agreed in 2021. Under each of the 6 items included within the vision, the report sets out the activities that are being delivered by partners in support of those objectives, and also examples of how the shared values of the city are being enacted and demonstrated through their work. The report also summarises the activity from the City Vision Conference that was held in July, which brought people together really for the first time since the vision was actually agreed at any scale. And when we talked about what work has been undertaken, what are the opportunities for future collaboration and focus, and Annex A to the main report is a summary that pulls together loads of those examples. Happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Kelly. Members? I mean, comment from me that the conference that we had back in July was, by all accounts, and not in my, just from my view, but from all the feedback I've had, one of the best conference events that we've hosted in the city for quite some time. Everybody really enjoyed it. There was a lot of energy in the room and, as I say, a lot of positive feedback. I also note that we're nearly out of hashtag Team Portsmouth badges because everybody likes them and likes the idea of being part of something. And I think that's the key point, really, that this is being part of something. It's not the council's vision. It was very much the city's vision. It was forged after a lot of consultation with our partners, with residents, but also with groups across all the different sectors, from health and business, greening groups across the city, cultural groups, transport interested groups. So everyone fed into something that we adopted as the Imagine Portsmouth work. And the fact that that's ongoing and that we're still very much monitoring it and playing our part in it, but encouraging others to do so and feedback and continue to put in new ideas about how we can take this work forward is extremely valuable. And excitingly, we also got lots of nice feedback for what people would like to see happen in 2026 around the centenary of the city. So we'll be taking some of those ideas forward as the months progress. So anything from anyone else, or are we happy to approve the update report, note it, and thank you very much for all the work and effort, both from you and Charlotte and other members of the team. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, Kelly. Right, now I'm crossing everything off as I go to make sure I end up back in the right place. So I think, Colette, it's the use of pesticides update now.
I think it is. Thank you. This report is just to provide Cabinet with a progress report regarding the use of pesticides across the council, and has been written on behalf of all the departments that have got who carry out that function. The full details of the progress are in Appendix A, but Section 4 of the report highlights some of the progress that we've seen, particularly in the last year. So it's worth noting that the work to reduce use of pesticides has become embedded as part of the kind of business as usual for all the teams involved, and guidelines, with all the learning from the last year or so, guidelines for use are being developed with the aim of reducing use whilst balancing the impacts and consequences. And those guidelines include considerations of issues around health and safety, including public safety, our management of invasive species, and impacts on tourism and damage to infrastructure. But overall, overall use is limited and is on a case-by-case basis. But there are areas where it is appropriate or necessary to use pesticides. However, as I say, it's part of the business as usual now, and along with the greening strategy that was agreed by Cabinet in October 23, we've also added a link to information about pesticides on our website, and Appendix B shows the Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services team have recorded usage by task and site, and so their records now show that there's close to an 80% reduction in use in the last 5 years, which is positive. Estate walkabouts for local authority tenants and leaseholders have covered the topic in depth, with lots of discussion about our approach to land management. And Appendix C shows some of the greening works that have been completed in Buckland this year, where we've transformed concreted areas to green space with grassed areas and trees, reducing the need to use pesticides. Appendix D also shows is a copy of the leaflet for allotment users, which has been developed to highlight the benefit of alternative methods of plot management. And COLAS, our partners COLAS, have trialled a number of different applicators and reduced strength and continue to consider alternatives as they become available. Our next steps are to complete that work on the guidance of use of pesticides, and that the team will continue to seek out and trial alternatives as they become available and where possible. And we'll also continue to identify opportunities for greening where appropriate, which can lead to a further reduction of use. That's it. Adrian's done this work as well with me, so we've pulled this together from all the different departments, so if there are any questions.
Okay. Adrian, anything you wanted to add? Or?
No, Colette's covered most of that with the summary from the headline report, but happy to answer any questions on Appendix B.
Okay, in which case, thank you both. Members, any comments, questions? Councillor Mason.
Question. 4.7, you note that the glyphosate use has reduced by 80% in the last 5 years. And in Appendix B, you note that a considerable amount of the remaining use of glyphosate is in the maintenance of schools and academies under trading services. How much further do you think it would be possible to reduce our use of glyphosate in a realistic framework?
I think the answer to that is we're going to have to monitor it year on year. It is always going to be subject to the environmental conditions year on year, and also just in terms of the ongoing standard across those sites. I think the work done to measure the usage across the areas that highlights the amount used in schools, for example. There is some work to be done working with the schools, see if they wish for the same maintenance to be adopted to their hard surfaces and areas, or if there's scope to reduce usage there. But otherwise, it's a constant ongoing evaluation of those areas, the standard they're achieving and being maintained at. But I think, it's a significant reduction this year because of the change in the product we've used, as well as the reduction in the maintenance across a lot of the areas, in terms of some of the relaxed mowing and the way that some of the areas are maintained. But the usage will vary year on year. I think we're probably pretty much at the minimum amount for us at the moment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Barrett, please.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the report today. This is a great piece of work across all the departments in the council working together, so they're not siloed. But it's also part of a greater piece of work as well in regards to greening and the environment of our city. All part of, as mentioned, part of our greening strategy as well to increase biodiversity. So obviously this piece of work is an important piece of work that we continue to work on, but it's also part of a greater scheme. We're looking at other methods as well. So we've looked at no-mow areas and just trying to find different ways where we can look after, and look after our areas, but also promote and increase biodiversity as well. I think it's really important to say that obviously we're trying to reduce pesticide use, and you can see the reduction in the that has been mentioned, particularly in the park sort of areas. And I think some of that as well, over the years, we've bought services in-house so we can control that a bit more as well. So I think that's very important to notice that. But I think it's also important to know that this is a hard piece of work to do. We have a duty of care to our residents, particularly highways and colas. We have to maintain our pathways to make sure people don't trip over. And I know that's a problem that Brighton had. And to be honest, I think we should be very proud of the work we're doing here, because let's be honest, the easy way and the easy solution is to just carry on using pesticides. It's not what we want, but it's the easiest thing to do. But we haven't done that, so I believe Isle of Wight, they've had to back out on their pesticide use where they wanted to be pesticide free. We've seen Brighton, they've had to reverse their use and pesticide free city pledge that they did, and somewhere up north also had to as well. Probably through the same issues that we've had complaints sometimes, particularly around graveyards where we were trying to do bits, but some people said that they were not overly pleased with how the graveyards were looking. They felt it was overgrown. Therefore, that's why we've looked at alternative trials as well. So not only have we looked at no-mow, but we've looked at manual weed clearance. We've looked at, so we've done a trial this year, I believe it was a drip method trial that Colas trialled to see whether they could just put one drip on of a concentrated amount and just see how that went. But also, as has been used in parks as well, highways have used a reduced amount of glyphosate, which has resulted in drops. But also, it's, as Colette said, it's a case-by-case basis that we've looked at as well. So a lot of the areas are only having a spray, particularly the pathways, because that's what we have to keep clear, once a year, and sometimes not at all. We know that there's been a change in how people view weeds, and I'll probably get shot for saying weeds, to be honest, because some people don't like them. So unconventional plants, I think I was told to call them. But there has been a change in that. So, you know, people do care about the environment. We care too. And I think we should be proud that we said that we would phase it out. That's what we're doing. It's taking some time, but we're doing it the proper way. We're not rushing into it. We've looked at how we can do it. We're constantly trialling different methods, although that comes with its own problems as well in regards to costs, because some of these things do cost quite a bit. It's a continual trials and looking how we can work with this, but it's working because we are seeing a reduction year on year in the different departments. And when I talk to colleagues across the country who want to do this, I am pleased to say I spoke to someone in another council not too far from here, and they were in awe at the work that we had done because they weren't sure how they would be able to reduce or phase out pesticides at all, and they actually hadn't even started the work yet. So they want to talk to our teams to see, because they feel that we're setting a good example going forward. So yes, the easy way would be to just carry on using it, but we're doing it the right and the proper way, and I think we should be pleased that we are doing that and that we're not turning our back on it and walking away, that we are working hard to do what we said we would do, which is what the point was anyway. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing the continual trials and other methods coming forward, and we'll carry on doing what we're doing well.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Anyone else? No, I mean, I concur. It's a good piece of work. We've got to balance pragmatism with the desire to do everything we can to both protect and enhance the environment. It's quite clear that the work that's being undertaken across directorates within the council is being proven to be very effective, whilst not compromising some of those key issues that we have to balance against. So, members, are we happy to receive the report without any adjustments? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Colette, and thank you to Adrian. I am double checking. I think the last item on the agenda today then is item 7. We've already had a deputation earlier from Councillor Gerarda in favour of item 7, and we now receive the report by Claire Looney, please.
Councillor Pitt, thank you very much. The report outlines very similar arguments to that put forward by Councillor Gerarda in terms of the fact that we believe Valletta is a possible opportunity for the city to have a new and different type of international link. The City of Valletta has a very strong history with Portsmouth, as Councillor Gerarda alluded to and as the report outlines. However, in particular, I think there's good opportunities for us to learn from a much bigger cruise industry which goes into Valletta, where the geographical location of the island means that they support both cruises going to the Western Mediterranean and to the Eastern Mediterranean. I also believe that there is a learning in terms of how our port uses its energy, which could also be a benefit to Valletta as a port. As officers, we strive to ensure that any links that are formed, and new links obviously are determined by Cabinet and also by the receiving city, have a mutual benefit to both cities. We need to ensure that they are active, that there are opportunities for economic growth and development, as well as looking at those historical links. I hope the report outlines where we believe the links and coverage and opportunities sit, and we would expect that the programme of activities, if this link is supported, would be pretty much business as normal, with opportunities for supporting businesses with links in Malta, as we do with our existing twin and sister cities, and also looking for education and young people's engagement across a range of activities. We're aware that the change to more acceptance of virtual communications has made many of these links far more practical and resource less, if you like, in terms of resources needed to support travel and links, and that a lot more can be achieved online. I'd be very happy to take any further questions about the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Colleagues, any questions? Councillor Atwell, please.
Just a comment. My thanks to the cross-party twinning advisory panel for their work considering this proposal and for asking for it to be brought here this afternoon. The panel's view, in line with officer recommendation, is that there are sufficient strategic interests and historic ties to support a formal approach to Valletta. And as the tiny island of tolerance, which is Malta's nickname, the city of Valletta mirrors our own identity as a tolerant and welcoming city. Thanks to Claire and to Carol for the work that they have done to date. If Cabinet is minded to approve this recommendation, of course, it's just the start of the process. And again, if we're minded to approve, I look forward to following developments in the coming months.
Councillor Mason.
Over the years I've been on this council, there have been many, many requests from many cities on 5 continents for twinning. I am more enthusiastic about this than most. I think it's a very appropriate twin city for us. We complement each other, we can learn from each other. But we complement each other in our histories as well. Malta is a naval port, commercial port, industrial port. It is also exceedingly densely settled. But there are a couple of other things which I think this is, as a twin has got going for it. One, they speak excellent English. And secondly, you will get some of the best food you've ever eaten if you go down Republica Street.
Oh, an advert. Anyone else? I think broadly in support of this and taking it forward to further explore the possibility of developing that relationship. I agree with the comments of others that we have much to potentially celebrate together and work towards. I would like to add a recommendation to this, though, colleagues, in as much as I'm very aware that we have a limited resource in terms of support, officer support for twinning arrangements. So this is going to take quite a bit more work to get to the point where we're ready to formalise this arrangement, and it would seem sensible that no decisions are taken on any more twinning arrangements for a period of at least 6 months. So I'm very happy to that other discussions can happen, but we won't take any further decisions on twinning arrangements for 6 months while this is actually followed through and delivered. And because not apart from anything else, it also puts pressure on the events team, because if we're going to have a signing arrangement either here or there, then there's that to be organised as well, the travel arrangements to make and all sorts of things. So we just need to be mindful of the resource. So would you all be comfortable if we said we'll take no more decision papers on this for a period of 6 months? Yes. City solicitor, any reason we can't make that decision? Peter says no, so that's absolutely fine. Okay, just to make it clear, we are aware that there are other proposals being developed. Very happy for those discussions to continue and for those proposals to be further developed in the meantime, but we won't take a decision paper on anything for 6 months, just so that we give Carol some time to get the work done around this. So thank you very much. Please pass on our thanks to Carol as well, Claire, and we'll look forward to seeing the plans hopefully come to fruition. Everyone happy? Yes. Okay. In that case, that concludes today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you all for coming.